My name is Kaia Nordstrom, and the moment my life changed forever was when Victor Tmaine looked me dead in the eye and said, "Good luck finding another job at your age in tech," while laughing so hard his coffee mug actually rattled against his desk. I had just placed my resignation letter in front of him 12 years. I had worked as his so-called senior analyst, watching him present my revolutionary data optimization algorithms to industry conferences, board meetings, and tech summits as his own brilliant innovations. The entire tech world knew Victor Tmaine as a visionary genius who had transformed 3 major industries with groundbreaking algorithmic solutions. What they didn't know was that I had assigned every single line of code. But let me pause for just a second here before I go deeper into what happened. Could you please take a few seconds to tell me in the comments where you're listening from? Because I want to know where my story reaches, and also subscribe, and click the bell icon, because what I'm about to tell you is going to get absolutely wild. And you're not going to want to miss what happens next, okay? So there I was standing in Victor's corner office on the 42nd floor, watching this man who had built his entire career on my work treat my resignation like some kind of joke. He was 53, silver-haired, always wore thirsty expensive navy suits that probably cost more than most people make in a month. The kind of man who never questioned why it deserved to be at the top. Seriously, Ka. He continued, leaning back in his chair like he was doing me some kind of favor by even acknowledging my existence. "You're 41 in tech years, that's practically ancient. And honestly, what experience do you really have besides following my directions for over a decade?" I just stood there holding this cardboard box, nothing fancy, just a regular moving box I had grabbed from the supply closet. Victor glanced at it with mild curiosity. "What's that?" "Your personal trinkets, family photos, and coffee mugs, my backup drives," I say calmly. His expression shifted slightly. Not panic yet, but definitely confusion. "Backup drives of what?" "Every algorithm iteration, every failed experiment, every breakthrough moment, 12 years of development, logs, time-stamped code commits, and design documentation, all stored in my personal cloud storage." Naturally, now I watched the color literally drain from his face. See, Victor had a secret that I had kept for 12 years. He had never understood a single line of the technical work, not on algorithm, not one optimization, not even the basic principles behind the systems that have made him famous. He was essentially a very well-paid presenter who had gotten extremely good at explaining my innovations as if he had created them himself. "You can't take proprietary company information," he said. But his voice had lost all that confident bluster from just moments before. "Actually, I can. Company policy section 7.3 clearly states that personal research, backups, and development documentation belong to the employee who created them. I wrote that policy myself 3 years ago when we had that security audit. You signed off on it without reading it." Remember, the thing about Victor was that he had always been too arrogant to bother learning the technical details of anything. He would sit in our development meetings, not at the right moments, ask a few surface-level questions, and then walk into boardrooms and present my work with complete confidence. For 12 years, I had watched him take credit for algorithms that had revolutionized inventory management for major retail chains, optimized supply networks for global shipping companies, and created predictive models that saved manufacturing companies millions of dollars annually. "Call, let's talk about this reasonably," he said, standing up and trying to regain some authority. "Those algorithms were developed on company time, using company resources." Assisting my brain, I interrupted. "My education, my creativity, my problem-solving abilities. And according to the intellectual property agreements you made me sign, any documentation I created for personal learning and development purposes belongs to me. I've been very careful about that for 12 years. The truth was, I had been planning this moment for exactly 18 months. It started when I overheard Victor at the company holiday party talking to the board chair about how he was the innovative mind behind our success, how he had personally developed every major algorithm, how the company would be lost without his technical genius. He was standing maybe 10 feet away from me, describing in detail how he had supposedly created the optimization model that I had spent 8 months perfecting, working nights and weekends to solve problems he couldn't even comprehend that night. I started documenting everything, every email where I explained technical concepts to him, every meeting where he asked me to walk him through algorithms he claimed to have invented, every code review where his suggestions made it clear he didn't understand basic programming principles. He created a detailed timeline of every innovation, every breakthrough, every solution that had come from my work alone. Besides, I continued, I won't be needing to find another job. I've already accepted a position where he demanded Chief Technology Officer at Quantum Dynamics. Quantum Dynamics was our biggest competitor. They had been trying to recruit the brilliant mind behind our algorithmic innovations for 3 years, sending increasingly generous offers that Victor had always intercepted and dismissed without telling me. What Victor didn't know was that 6 months ago I had finally made contact with their head of engineering, a woman named Dr. Priya Vasquez, who actually understood technical innovation. When she saw it, "You can't, there are non-compete clause which applied to you, not to me." I was never considered senior enough management to be bound by executive non-compete agreements, another oversight in your contract management. I watched Victor Tmaine process what was happening in his mind. I was just his assistant who happened to be good with computers. The idea that I could independently navigate corporate negotiations, legal frameworks, and strategic career moves was completely outside his understanding of who I was. The real problem, Victor has said, is that you never bothered learning. What made you famous? Here's what was about to happen in 6 months. I would release next-generation algorithmic solutions at quantum dynamics that would make our current systems look like basic calculators. Weren't improvements on existing algorithms. These were completely new approaches I have been developing. In my personal time, innovations that represented the next evolutionary step in data optimization. When quantum dynamics started showcasing these revolutionary new systems, the tech industry would immediately recognize the advancement. Industry experts would start asking questions about how these algorithms worked, requesting technical papers, demanding detailed explanations of the methodology, and Victor would have absolutely no answers. Meanwhile, our current systems would start showing their age. Without me there to continuously refine and optimize the algorithm's performance, would gradually decline. The sophisticated monitoring and adjustment protocols I had built would begin failing without someone who understood the underlying architecture bit. The real masterpiece was going to be the industry conference circuit. Victor had already committed to keynote presentations at 4 major tech conferences over the next 8 months. He would be expected to discuss technical innovations, answer detailed questions about algorithmic approaches, and engage with other experts about future development directions. Except he had never actually understood any of it. I had always prepared his presentations, written his talking points, and even fed him answers through earpieces during question and answer sessions. Without me, he would be standing in front of hundreds of industry experts with nothing but memorized buzzwords and surface-level explanations. "You don't understand what you're doing," Victor said. But his voice was shaking. "Now this will destroy your career. No one will ever trust you again. If you steal proprietary information, I'm not stealing anything. I'm taking my own work and actually drive." Vasquez has already put me in touch with patent attorneys who are very interested in reviewing the documentation I've maintained. Apparently, there might be questions about whether the patents filed under your name accurately reflect the true inventor. That was when Victor's face went completely white. The patents, 18 different algorithmic innovations, all filed under his name as the primary inventor, with me listed only as a contributing researcher. Patents that were worth millions in licensing revenue, patents that formed the foundation of our company's intellectual property portfolio, patents that I could prove I had developed entirely myself. That MS-stamp development logs are particularly interesting. I continue at these show a clear progression of innovation, problem solving, and technical breakthrough that corresponds exactly with every major patent filing. What they don't show is any input, feedback, or contribution from you beyond approving the final implementation. Victor sat back down heavily. I could practically see him calculating the implications if those patents were challenged. If I could prove I was the actual inventor, the financial consequences would be catastrophic. The company could lose its intellectual property portfolio, licensing agreements could be invalidated, stock value could plummet, and Victor's reputation would be completely destroyed. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "I don't want anything from you, Victor. I'm just leaving. But I thought you should know what's coming." I turned toward the door carrying my box of backup drives. 12 years of innovation, 12 years of breakthrough solutions, 12 years of technical genius that had been credited to a man who couldn't write a basic sorting algorithm if his life depended on it. The really tragic part, I say, pausing at the office entrance, is that if you had just given me proper credit, if you had acknowledged my contributions, if you had treated me as a partner instead of a subordinate, none of this would be happening. I would have been happy to stay and continue developing innovations under shared recognition. Kaia, but I was already walking away down the hallway, where I had spent 12 years being invisible, past the conference room, where Victor had presented my work to countless executives, past the desk, where I had solved problems that he couldn't even understand. The elevator doors closed and he watched the floor numbers descend. 40 to 41, 40, 39. My phone buzzed with a text message from Dr. Vasquez. "Legal has reviewed your documentation. Patent attorneys want to meet next week. This is going to be bigger than we thought." I smiled for the first time in months, because what Victor didn't know was that this was just the beginning. The backup drives, the documentation, the potential challenges, those were just the opening moves. What was really going to destroy him was something much simpler and much more devastating. In exactly 3 weeks, Victor was scheduled to deliver the keynote presentation at the International Conference on Algorithmic Innovation 3. Zero of the world's leading tech experts would be watching the presentation topic. Was next generation optimization revolutionary approaches to complex problem solving? It was going to be broadcast live, recorded for posterity, and attended by journalists from every major tech publication, and Victor was going to have to deliver that presentation. Without me writing his talking points, without me preparing his slides, without me feeding him answers through an earpiece, he was going to have to stand in front of the entire tech industry and explain algorithms he had never understood, discuss innovations he couldn't comprehend, and answer technical questions about work he had never actually done. The elevator reached the ground floor and the doors opened to Thelaby, where I had entered as an invisible senior analyst 12 years ago. But I was walking out as something completely different. I was walking out as someone who was about to change everything. 3 weeks passed, and I watched Victor's world crumble from my new office at Quantum Dynamics. Dr. Vasquez had given me a corner suite on 38th floor with windows overlooking the city, a team of 12 brilliant engineers, and a development budget that was triple what Victor had ever allocated for innovation. But the real entertainment was watching Victor's social media presence. See, Victor had always been extremely active on professional networking platforms, daily posts about innovation, philosophy, leadership, insights, technical macros, the kind of content that had built his reputation as a thought leader in algorithmic development. Text now with me gone, his posts were becoming increasingly desperate and obviously shallow. 3 days after I left, he posted about the importance of collaborative development environments. 5 days later, it was leveraging team expertise for optimal outcomes. By the second week, he was just sharing articles written by other people with vague comments, like interesting perspectives on emerging technologies. The tech community was starting to notice comments on his posts were shifting from respectful engagement to subtle questioning. Would love to hear your technical take on the implementation challenges mentioned here. Victor, how would you elaborate on how this approach differs from your optimization methodology? Victor couldn't answer any of them. Meanwhile, I was having the time of my life. Dr. Vasquez had introduced it to the engineering team as their new CTO, and when I walked them through my next generation algorithmic approach, the room went completely silent. Not confused silence, impressed silence. This is at least 5 years ahead of anything I've seen in the industry, said Chenny, our senior software architect. How long have you been developing these concepts? About 3 years. In my spare time, I told him I was waiting for the right opportunity to implement them properly. Why didn't your previous company move forward with this level of innovation? I just smiled. Management wasn't technically sophisticated enough to understand that potential. But the really beautiful part was watching Victor try to maintain his speaking commitments without me. 2 weeks after I left, he was scheduled for a panel discussion at a regional tech summit. I watched the live stream from my new office. The moderator asked him about recent developments in machine learning optimization. Victor gave a rehearsed answer about adaptive algorithmic frameworks that sounded like he had memorized it from a textbook. When that follow-up question came, can you walk us through a specific implementation example? Victor actually paused for 15 seconds before giving a completely generic response about iterative testing methodologies. Other panelists exchanged glances. Dr. Amanda Riley from Stanford looked genuinely confused. Victor, that's interesting, but I was hoping you could discuss the technical architecture behind your optimization models, the mathematical foundations that make them so effective. Another pause. Well, Amanda, I believe in keeping technical discussions accessible to broader audiences, but this is a technical conference. Our audience specifically wants detailed algorithmic insights. Victor deflected again, and I could see the exact moment when Riley realized that something was wrong. Her expression shifted from expectation to puzzlement to concern. By the end of the panel, she was essentially carrying the conversation, while Victor nodded and made vague comments about innovation ecosystems. The tech blogs picked up on it immediately. Has Victor Tmaine lost his technical edge? Was the headline on Tech Insider. 3 days later, the article was subtle but devastating, questioning whether industry leaders were becoming too disconnected from hands-on development work. But none of that compared to what happened the night before the International Conference on Algorithmic Innovation. I was working late at Quantum Dynamics, putting finishing touches on our new optimization platform, when my phone rang. Unknown number. Call, please, I need your help. Victor's voice, but completely different from the confident executive I had worked for. He sounded broken. Victor, how did you get this number? I called your old apartment. Your neighbor gave me your cell. Listen, I know things ended badly, but I'm in serious trouble. Herr Tomaro's presentation. I can't do it without your help. I leaned back in my chair. What exactly are you asking me? I need the technical content, the slides, the talking points, the explanations. I'll pay you consulting fees, whatever you want. Just please help me get through this presentation. Victor, you've been presenting my work for 12 years. Surely you understand it well enough by now to explain it yourself. You know I don't. You've always known that. And there it was, after 12 years, Victor Tmaine was finally admitting That he had never understood any of the work he had built his career on. I'm sorry, Victor. But I can't help you. I have my own responsibilities now. Ka, they're going to destroy me up. They're 3-0 people live broadcast recorded forever. If I can't answer their technical questions, then maybe you shouldn't have spent 12 years pretending to be something you're not. Hung up the next morning. I was sitting in the front row of the International Conference on Algorithmic Innovation, surrounded by the most brilliant technical minds in the industry. Dr. Vasquez was next to me along with our entire engineering team. We had been invited as special guests to preview some of the innovations quantum dynamics will be announcing over the coming months. Ladies and gentlemen, the conference moderator announced, please welcome Victor Tmaine, Chief Innovation Officer at Teknova Solutions, presenting Next Generation Optimization, Revolutionary Approaches to Complex Problem Solving. Victor walked onto the stage, and I could see his nervousness from 100 feet away. His movements were stiff, his smile forced. He looked directly at me in the front row, and I saw something that almost looked like pleading in his eyes. His presentation started predictably rehearsed opening remarks about the importance of innovation, generic statements about algorithmic advancement, broad generalizations about industry trends. The slides were obviously thrown together at the last minute, basic charts, stock photos, bullet points with no substance for the first 10 minutes. He managed to maintain the illusion, but then Dr. Patricia Wong from MIT raised her hand. Victor, thank you for the overview. Could you walk us through the mathematical foundations of your optimization approach? Specifically, how do you handle multidimensional constraint satisfaction in dynamic environments? Victor stared at her for what felt like an eternity. That's an excellent question, Patricia. The mathematical fountains are quite complex, yes, but could you give us the actual mathematical framework, the algorithm's computational complexity analysis, well, without getting too deeply into the weeds? Victor, this is a technical conference. We're here specifically to get into the weeds. I watched Victor's face cycle through confusion, panic, and desperation. He looked at me again, and I could see him calculating whether I might somehow help him, but I just sat there. Expressionless framework involves iterative processes and optimization matrices. Esther Wong looked genuinely concerned. Now, I'm sorry, Victor, but could you be more specific? Are you using gradient descent, genetic algorithms, neural networks, dynamic programming? What's the actual approach? It's a hybrid methodology that combines multiple approaches. Which approaches specifically? And that's when Victor completely fell apart. The technical details are proprietary, and I can't share the specific implementation without Victor. Interrupted Dr. James Ickafer from Google. You're presenting at a technical conference. The entire point is sharing technical details. We're not asking for code, we're asking for methodology. And honestly, added Dr. Sarakim from Amazon, some of the claims in your abstract seem mathematically impossible. You're suggesting optimization improvements that would violate fundamental computational complexity principles. I felt Dr. Vasquez beside me. She leaned over and whispered, did you write that abstract? No, I whispered back. That was all. Victor, trying to sound impressive. What happened next was absolutely brutal to watch. Drakeem stood up and walked to the microphone in the audience section. Victor, I've been following your work for years, and I have to ask directly, do you actually understand the algorithms you're presenting as your innovation? Auditorium went completely silent. 3-0 people watching. Victor Tmaine being called out on live broadcast by one of the most respected algorithmic researchers in the world. That's an inappropriate question, is it? Because I reviewed your recent social media posts or panel discussions and now this presentation, and I'm seeing a consistent pattern of technical avoidance. You consistently deflect when asked for specific implementation details. Dr. Wong stood up to actual. Sarah raises an interesting point. Victor, could you explain why your optimization model claims to achieve polynomial time solutions to problems that are fundamentally implicit? I don't think this is the appropriate forum for this. Is exactly the appropriate forum. Dr. Okafor was standing. No, you're making claims about revolutionary algorithmic breakthroughs. We're asking you to explain how they work. And then something happened that I hadn't planned, something that made this moment even more perfect than I had imagined. Dr. Vasquez stood up. Actually, I think I can answer these questions, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium sound system. Every head in the room turned toward her. Victor looked like he was about to pass out. Vasquez, the moderator, said, clearly confused. You're not scheduled to present until this afternoon, I know. But I think there's been a significant misunderstanding about the source of these algorithmic innovations. The optimization models that Victor has been presenting for the past 12 years, they weren't developed by Victor or his team at Teknova Solutions. The auditory erupted in confused murmuring. They were developed by Drive. Kaia Nordstrom recently joined Quantum Dynamics as our Chief Technology Officer. Dr. Vasquez stood toward me and suddenly, 3-0 pairs of eyes were focused on me instead of Victor. Ka, would you like to explain the mathematical foundations That Victor seems unable to discuss. I stood up slowly, my heart racing. But my mind completely clear. Actually, I said I'd be happy to. I walked to the stage past Victor, who looked like he was frozen in place. The moderator handed me the microphone and I looked out at an auditorium full of the world's leading algorithmic researchers. The optimization model that Dr. Kim questioned achieves polynomial time solutions by restructuring the problem space. Rather than solving complete problems directly, I began instead of treating constraint satisfaction as a single complex problem. The algorithm decomposes it into a series of interconnected optimization tasks that can be solved independently and then integrated using a novel convergence methodology I developed. I could see faces in the audience lighting up with understanding and interest. Dr. Wong asked about mathematical foundations. The core approach uses modified Lagrangian multipliers combined with adaptive gradient descent. But the breakthrough was realizing that you could treat the constraint space as a dynamic manifold and use differential geometry to optimize the search path. For the next 20 minutes, I walked through the technical details of algorithms that had revolutionized 3 industries. I explained the mathematical principles, the computational complexity analysis, the implementation challenges, and the innovative solutions I had developed. The audience was completely engaged, asking sophisticated technical questions that I answered easily and thoroughly. These were the conversations I had dreamed of having for 12 years, discussions with brilliant minds who understood and appreciated the complexity of the work. When I finished, the auditorium erupted in applause, standing ovation from 3 technical experts who finally understood what they had been seeing in the industry for over a decade. Victor was still standing on the stage, but he looked completely forgotten, irrelevant. Kim approached the microphone again. Ka, this is fascinating work, but I have to ask, if you developed these algorithms, why has Victor Tmaine been presenting them as his innovations for 12 years? I looked directly at Victor, who was standing maybe 10 feet away from me. That's a question you should ask him. The auditorium went silent again, waiting for Victor's response. We worked as a team, collaborative development, Victor Drogoper called out. If this was collaborative work, why couldn't you explain any of the technical details? Specific implementation was handled by Kaia. Dr. Vasquez finished while you took credit for her innovations. And that's when the tech journalists in the audience realized they were witnessing the biggest fraud scandal in industry history. Phones were out, live streams were broadcasting, social media was exploding. Victor Tmaine exposed as fraud at international conference was trending within minutes. But the most beautiful moment came when Dr. Wong approached the microphone one final time. Victor, I think it's time for you to leave the stage. He walked off and I never saw him again. 6 months later, I was delivering my own keynote presentation at the same conference, introducing algorithm innovations that were genuinely revolutionary. Quantum dynamics had become the industry leader in optimization technology, and I had become the recognized expert that I had always been. Victor's career was completely destroyed. Technova Solutions lost their major contracts, their stock price collapsed, and Victor was quietly asked to resign. The patents were successfully challenged, and I was recognized as a true inventor of innovations worth millions in licensing revenue. But you know what the most satisfying part was? 3 weeks after the conference, I received a handwritten letter from Victor. Not an email, not a text message, but an actual letter delivered to my office. Ka said, "I spent 12 years taking credit for your genius, and I convinced myself that I deserved it. Because I was the one brave enough to present it to the world. I realize now that presenting someone else's work isn't bravery, it's cowardice. We're always the innovator, the problem solver, the brilliant mind behind everything we accomplished. I was just the person standing in your way." He was right, and that's my story. From invisible senior analyst to chief technology officer, from stolen credit to recognized genius, from workplace humiliation to industry transformation. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's becoming who you were always meant to be. So here's what I want you to do if the story inspired you. If it mattered you, think about your own untapped potential. If it reminded you that brilliance shouldn't be hidden or stolen, then please share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me about a time when you had to fight for recognition you deserved. And subscribe, because I've got more stories about people who refuse to stay invisible. The world is full of Victor Tmaines taking credit for other people's genius, but it's also full of people like us waiting for the right moment to step into the light.